Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. With the bannings that were supposed to impact Blue-Black Reanimator, people have been wondering what Blue-Black Reanimator looks like now there's no Troll of Khazad-dûm. This is a list that has got 2 5-0 leagues already, and it has beaten me a couple of times I think as well. The deck looks pretty solid. So, what is it trying to do? Well, we're kind of playing like the fairish Blue-Black Tempo games. We've got our Tamiyos, just a nice source of card advantage. We've got our Brazen Borrower as a nice little catch-all that can also beat down. Orcish Bowmasters, we all know and love. And then a Kaito, this card just completely changes the face of games when it enters play. And then instead of a Murktide Regent, this list is going for an Abhorrent Oculus, which is just a big monster that you can jam into play that generates advantage every turn. So you kind of got that thing. You got your Ponders and your Brainstorms, your Force of Wills, your Dazes, your Thoughtseizes, Fatal Push. So we're interacting with our opponent pretty normally. But then we just got this pile of 11 cards. That's all we have for our reanimation package now, 11 cards. So it's quite tight in the deck. But we have 4 Entombs, which means we get to run an Archon of Cruelty and an Archon of Atraxa in our deck that we can just fetch up as and when we want with the most efficient tutor that exists in Legacy in Entomb. So we can tutor these into the graveyard and then we can bring them back with one of our 4 Reanimates or one of our Animate Deads. Now, sometimes our opponent's going to have creatures we want to reanimate, or sometimes we can reanimate our own Tamiyos or our Orcish Bowmasters, or even our Abhorrent Oculus if it gets taken away from us. We've got a couple of Undercity Sewers we can fetch, so we can do things like we put the Undercity Sewers trigger on the stack, then we can Brainstorm to put one of these creatures on top. So this deck is definitely going to be something that is going to miss the Troll of Khazad-dûm, which I've always said is a thing that would happen. It's not going to be the same. There's had to be some sizable restructuring to this deck, but it looks pretty solid. I've played against it, and it is a tricky one to play against because you don't know it's Reanimator until it's too late, because there's no, okay, they've cycled a Troll of Khazad-dûm, I need to readjust what I'm planning for. It's like, okay, they're just playing these Blue-Black Tempo cards. Oh no, there's an Atraxa in play. We've got 3 Wastelands in the deck, which is interesting. Some people aren't sure whether you get to still run the Wastelands in the shell, but apparently you do, so let's just rock and roll with it. Sideboard-wise, we've got a bunch of different tools, whether it's removal, or graveyard hate, or counter magic, or artifact hate. We've got a sort of sampler of different things that exist in Legacy that we can draw upon. No big, like, massive pivot plans. We do have a couple of fair creatures, but we already have fair creatures in the main deck, so we're kind of supplementing those rather than just swapping our deck from being a Reanimator to a fair deck. Alright, not really much more to say about this. Let's just put it into play and see how it feels. Is Blue-Black Reanimator still really strong? I think it is. Let's find out in a league. For the best Eternal experience this summer, check out Eternal Mania in Hasselt, Belgium from August 8th to 10th. Aside from hosting the European Legacy Masters, they have a whole host of other tournaments from team trios to old school and pre-modern. I will be there playing Legacy and hanging out as a special guest. This will also be the first event that I'll be giving out my own special Marit Lage tokens, so why not come down to enjoy an awesome weekend ran by one of the best TOs in Europe. We are on the play. Yeah, this seems okay. We're a little bit start at the gate to this Undercity Sewers, but that's fine. Let's see what we find. An Underground Sea. I'm going to keep that. I don't really want to get jammed up if we get this Wasteland, because that's our only blue source at present. Alright, Underground Sea versus Underground Sea. This is the Legacy that we know and love for the last 2 years, I think it is now, that we've been living in the blue-black world. Okay, so we had a Ponder with no shuffle. I'll play this out. I will deploy a Tamiyo. I don't just want to fire off an Entomb. This is probably going to be our our shuffle effect for our Brainstorm. But if they try and remove our Tamiyo, we can do a Brainstorm which forces them to do other stuff. Now, if they just sat here with an Orcish Bowmasters, then, okay, they're not sat with an Orcish Bowmaster, at least not one they can deploy this turn. Harmony's normally been playing the Esper sort of decks lately, but they did body me with a Reanimator deck recently as well. Right, what's happening here? Can I go to my draw step? Fatal Push. I'm going to cast a Brainstorm here. We have Entomb Reanimate combo. Not too shabby. We got some Wastelands. I think I'm just going to put back one of these and one Wasteland. So this will flip. Do I want to draw that Wasteland? I really want the Entomb to resolve, so I will draw the Wasteland so I can play the other land first. It didn't look like they had anything going on there. Alright, Entomb, just on the stack, let's get Atraxa. Let's reanimate Atraxa. Let's draw a bunch of cards. Okay, so what do we want? I want this creature. I think we probably just want a Force of Will. And then we're just looking at a land. We get Polluted Delta here and a Thoughtseize. So we are just a million miles ahead of what our opponent is doing right now. Again, this is a situation where our opponent had no idea that we were doing Reanimate stuff when they see the Tamiyo. And then we can just go, actually, here's the thing. A Brainstorm. That's not the one we're fighting over here. They know we've got an Orcish Bowmasters coming, so they want to power out as many of these cantrips as they can to at least get the value off of them. White mana gives them protection from our creatures in the form of things like Swords to Plowshares. I could counterspell this and protect our threat. I think I'm willing to do that, given we have a lot of resources over here anyway. Spell Pierce is what I don't want to see here, which I suspect is what's coming. All right, we just got a counter spell. So they knew we had the Force of Will, they didn't know we had the blue card. All right, Blue-Black Reanimator, still busted after all these years. Let's overload our opponent's... So our opponent's going to be the control in this matchup. So we need to be more threatening. So we're going to get rid of our counter magic, bring in some threats. I would also like to have some like decent one-for-one interaction with our opponent. I also think Engineered Explosives is interesting here. So how do we go about doing that? Put all of our reanimation stuff into one little spot so we can work out the differing packages that our deck has on offer. So, do I like Wastelands in this matchup? Our opponent is 3 colours, so I think the Wastelands are probably good enough here. I think we can trim one animate... The Dazes don't look as good actually either. Like, let's just get rid of Dazes. Just have no counter magic, but just be running things like a bunch of removal. So we're trying to trade 1-for-1 against our opponent instead. Should I shave 1 Reanimate and have 1 Animate Dead and 1 Reanimate? Maybe that's slightly better. So this way we have things at different mana values in case there's anything weird like a counterbalance. We also have different card types so that the Atraxa can dig and find this. Alright, we'll try this. +4 threats, +4 interaction spells. Or sideways with the interaction. So Thoughtseize into Reanimate is a line we can run. We have a lot of lands here though. But one of them is like half a ponder. We can go and get another half ponder. I think I'm going to keep this. I'm not in love with it, but making land dots means we're not going to get cheesed out by Wasteland. We also get to play on basics because the mana in our deck isn't as good as it used to be, but it's still really good. Grafdigger's Cage. Sure, we can bounce that if and when the time comes. We also have the Engineered Explosives that can deal with that. I'm going to just play out my basic, and I'm going to fire in this Thoughtseize. Our opponent's got 4 cards in hand here. Fatal Push, Orcish Bowmasters, Tamiyo. I'm going to take this Bowmasters. This is a card that we can then reanimate if we wish to. Now, they have the Grafdigger's Cage, so reanimating isn't always the best idea in the world right now. But we do have the line of borrowing, taking this out, and then bouncing it. I think we should be able to find an answer to Tamiyo. We brought in like 3-4 more answers, I think, to Tamiyo. Okay. I think we just play out the Polluted Delta here. So our opponent's going to go get Surveil land here. So this is our window if we want to just get the Bowmasters down. I'm not sure we do, though. So if they flip the Tamiyo at some point, we can bounce it. But I'd like to use this bounce to then stick a big monster. So they're going to go get a clue token here. I want our cantrips to be live, which is why I took the Bowmaster, even though the more pressing threat at the time was the Tamiyo. I think we're going to go and get the Undercity Sewers here. Like a Bowmaster on this board isn't doing the most for us. Animate Dead, that's not the one we want right now, is it? A Ponder. We could Ponder and then we can kill our opponent's Bowmasters if they play one. That seems fine to me. Did you find another Bowmasters opponent? They did not. So a Tamiyo of our own and a Ponder. How do I feel? We're going to be behind on the Tamiyo front here. I think that's okay. So we have a question here. Is it the Tamiyo we want to resolve or the Bowmaster? Or to stick around, I should say. Because they're going to crack a clue and then Fatal Push our guy if we play out either of these. So which one would we prefer to have sticking around? I think it's the Bowmasters, which means we play the Tamiyo now. Right, they're cracking a clue. This is around any potential stifle effects. Right, and then we're just going to play this. They will fatal push it. That will be sad. But this is just to get it out. We're just trading 1 for 1 with 1 mana spells here. So it's no different to Thoughtseizing away the fatal push, with the intention of getting the Bowmasters going. At some point we do get to... Okay, they didn't do the end of turn fatal push. That's interesting. At some point we do get to bounce the... that's pretty good. I'm going to say we get to bounce the cage and then bring back something like another Bowmasters. So they can take the Bowmasters and then fatal push our Tamiyo. Yeah, that's pretty good. So they got 1 card in hand, but they're about to get a clue, so they're going to be able to get a little deeper. Thoughtseize for our opponent's single card. Not the best, I don't think. Let's just play this Undercity Sewers. A Dauthi Voidwalker. That is a threat. I'm okay with having a threat here. I like how it lines up with the Thoughtseize as well. So I'm going to just hold here with the intention of playing a Brazen Borrower and forcing this to flip. I suspect our opponent has gone a bit lower on counter magic as well, relying instead on things like this to cover our graveyard. So they know we have a Brazen Borrower. Let's see. They could have a Daze here. No. They're going to kill our creature with a plow or a push. So they can crack the clue to get Revolt. Shoulder's Edict. Sure. So we have a choice next turn whether or not we cast the Thoughtseize or the Dauthi Voidwalker first. Right, this Thoughtseize is probably going to take our Thoughtseize, so we're just going to cast a Dauthi Voidwalker and move on. I see. They know that we want the card that's on top of our library because we left it there with a Surveil. So we are winning the race in terms of damage, but our opponent is winning in terms of cards. And that's kind of the exchange we've got going on here. Now, if our opponent's 1 card in hand is a good one, then we're in trouble. Our opponent knows we have nothing here because they've seen our hand and had perfect information. Mystic Sanctuary, that can get back a Shoulder's Edict, that can answer our Dauthi Voidwalker. So they can crack a clue, they can ponder here. Yep, I like our opponent's position quite a bit here. We just got this blank sat around in our hand right now. Yep, so the Tamiyo is flipping, so next turn they can rebuy something if they want. Cage doesn't interact with how Tamiyo works, because you just put it straight back in your hand. Alright, deck. An island. I guess we play out this Flooded Strand so we can represent a hardcast Force of Will, give our opponent something to think about. Obviously we don't have Force of Wills in our deck, but our opponent doesn't necessarily know that. Get back the Shoulder's Edict, just making sure they're covered next time we have a threat, rather than just trying to go upstairs with this all the way. We got something like a Stoneforge Mystic here, or we just cracking clues. I'm not going to crack this. It's better to use this with a Brainstorm effect than it is just to have a very marginal, virtually irrelevant piece of thinning. And Entomb, you say. Okay, so this is probably like another shuffle effect we can leverage. We can also take out a card that we don't want to draw right now. So we can Entomb a... Is it Archon of Cruelty here? It might be. Because the Archon of Cruelty will answer the Tamiyo. Obviously we need to find a bounce spell for this cage first. If we just sit like this for a few turns, then the Tamiyo pops and we lose the game unless we can somehow slip a Orcish Bowmasters in before this pops. But they have an answer for Orcish Bowmasters in hand. Teferi is pretty good. Now they're going to be pretty happy to just sit back on his Tamiyo, keep going upstairs until we die. Yep, they don't need to do anything with this Teferi right now. Wouldn't mind my 1-of Engineered Explosives. Sure, you can take my Reanimate. I will deploy this Wasteland. Not that I think it matters, but we already have 2 cards we want to put back. I guess this would be a situation where if we had the Archon of Cruelty in hand, in our deck, we could possibly draw it and cast it. I really should just have this game though. I'd be surprised if they didn't win from here. Plussing the Teferi. Plussing the Tamiyo. So next turn they get to draw half of their deck, which is a lot. Is this the Engineered Explosives turn? It is not. It's the We Drew a Land turn. Alright, back to the sideboard. Don't want to do anything differently here. So if we'd have taken the Tamiyo instead of the Orcish Bowmasters at the start, things could have been quite different there. This hits artifacts and creatures, but doesn't hit planeswalkers. I think I'm okay. I don't mind Daze on the play, But our opponent is pretty good, and they're just going to play around it most of the time. How many answers do we have? We have 3 answers to their cage style things. Honestly, I think this is fine. We just go in. 3 answers is plenty. We can, you know, brainstorm cards we don't want back and all that sort of jazz. I'll keep this. Alright, they mulligan to 6, which is already a good start for us. This hand does not really care about their graveyard hate. So we've got a Fatal Push if we want it, or a Brainstorm. And then we can just keep playing guys. So I think there's probably Dauthi Voidwalker to begin with. Shut off their graveyard in case anything like a Murktide. There's probably a Fatal Push locked and loaded in our opponent's hand somewhere. But all the removal that gets spent on our Dauthi Voidwalker is not going to be targeted at these 2 more important creatures. I suspect we're going to see Fatal Push. It could be a Surveil land and they'll clean this up on their turn. Yeah, okay. They don't have to immediately answer Dauthi Voidwalker. They left a card on top. Sure. Underground Sea. So this always gets hit by a Fatal Push. There's no need to... Yeah, there it goes. There's no need to mess around with it. This gives us a window where we can cast a Brainstorm without having to worry about... I was going to say without having to worry about our opponent's Orcish Bowmasters. Okay, I would like to cast a Brainstorm first. Okay, more threats. I don't hate that. We obviously want to Fatal Push and Thoughtseize this turn, so we need these 2 things. We can just put the Polluted Delta on the bottom. I don't know if we want the Wasteland, though. I guess we can sort of see when we get there. But we could put this away and then just go and fetch up instead. Alright, let's Thoughtseize our opponent first. And that way we can make sure that our Fatal Push is going to work. Force of Will to Ferry Kaito. I'm going to take this Force of Will. And then I'm going to Fatal Push this... Oh no, I'm not. I'm going to crack my land first, aren't I? So we go and get an Underground Sea here. Let's Fatal Push this Tamiyo. So they can go and make a Teferi here. But we can Orcish Bowmasters it, which is pretty reasonable. Alright, they're going for a Brainstorm instead. Not a bad one to find here. They're probably going to put this Kaito back. So I'm not expecting them to have this still in their hand. Because the Kaito isn't great when they don't have anything to ninjutsu in. 4 mana is a lot. A Shoulder's Edict. That answers Planeswalkers. Am I playing a Dauthi around Daze, or am I playing a Barrowgoyf here? We could just hold up this Orcish Bowmasters in response to something like a Teferi. I'm willing to do that. The Shoulder's Edict doesn't answer a Teferi, but it can answer a Kaito. If they just tap down for a Kaito. Right, I will put this Orcish Bowmaster into play at end step. It's not normally a thing you like to do against opposing Orcish Bowmaster decks. It does give our opponent the opportunity to then just ping this down with their own Bowmasters. But we want some pressure going. And explosives. That doesn't hurt. If they got Bowmasters, our Bowmaster dies anyway. Let's see what the play is here. That is a Tundra. So they are accessing Source of Plowshares / Teferi Time Raveler mana. Alright, you can plow that one. Is this the big Barrowgoyf turn, or is it little Dauthi Voidwalker turn? I think it's Barrowgoyf. This way, if we draw another land, we can double spell next turn. Force of Will pitching Teferi. Sure. Now, we have 4 Reanimate effects in our deck that can bring back this Barrowgoyf as well. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand. It might be a Kaito, it might not be. If they go land Kaito here, that's fine. A Teferi, sure. Are they going to bounce our token and draw a card? That seems fine. Wouldn't mind having access to an Orcish Bowmaster right now. Okay, a land. I think we go get our Dauthi Voidwalker down, and then we can Shoulder's Edict away this Teferi. Do we even need to take this Teferi out right now? I think so. Because this will put it underneath our Dauthi Voidwalker, so that we can turn this into a Teferi if we have to resolve something. If they drop a Kaito at the full cost, we can just bash it. Okay. No Kaito this turn. Interesting. This game could break in a multiple selection of different ways. We're going to hold this Explosives in hand. That can go into the graveyard. Alright, reanimation effect, and we get an Atraxa. That seems pretty good. We could play this out to dodge it getting Thoughtseized, but I would like to just have a way that we can answer a Tamiyo, because our opponent's going to play differently if they know we have an explosives. Our opponent doesn't have a Kaito, that's what this tells me here. A Brainstorm. Do we play this out on 2 so we can blow up an Orcish Bowmaster if that's what they have in response here? I think we just take the hit if they have an Orcish Bowmaster. Here it comes. Yeah, okay. So we can take the hit, we can blow this up if we want to. But like, if we find like a Reanimate effect, then it doesn't matter. We can play Barrowgoyf right now. We don't need this Entomb. Do I need this explosives? I do kind of like the explosives here. I guess we'll put the explosives on top and then we can decide what we're doing with our fetch land. Yeah, so you can ping us for a bit, but we're just going to play a massive 4-5 that's going to be the biggest thing on the board. Our opponent's got no cards in hand. And they are drawing randomly off the top. And we'll play this land out so we have access to a Surveil land if that's the thing we need. Our opponent probably has a Surveil land of their own here. Meticulous Archive would be my guess. Oh no, they're Mystic Sanctuary. So we're going to go get back a Fatal Push here. A Source of Plowshares. Okay. So do I need this Engineered Explosives on top? Or are we fighting a little bit harder with trying to reanimate something? Actual Factual Reanimate is a little bit sketchy. I think we probably have to take the explosives and answer the army token. Sure, we gain 4 life, we take 4 life. So it's kind of a wash this turn. So I can cast this for 0. We get the most time doing it this way. We probably should have surveilled first, because it might change what we want to put this on. Take out the Orc army, take 1 damage. It does mean that our cantrips are worse, but we have more time to just naturally draw cards here. A Wasteland. We can take out our opponent's only white source. Honestly, I'm down to do that. Like, yes, it means we're going to take another round of getting hit by the Bowmasters, but it means that our opponent's not going to be able to cast any of their things like Teferi, Source to Plowshares, that sort of thing. If our opponent had 2 white sources, I would not do that. I would have just milled it over. Animate Dead. Right, let's just go and get this Atraxa back. There's also no hard cast Force of Will available over there. If this resolves, we almost certainly win the game. Is there a Consign to Memory on this trigger? No. Is there a Consign to Memory on this trigger? I think you would hit the Animate Dead trigger rather than the Atraxa one anyway. A Petty Theft. Sure. But we still get the Atraxa trigger, which is a lot. So, what do we want here? I will take a Fatal Push. And I'll take a Reanimate. I will take a Brazen Borrower or Tamiyo. It's kind of a hard choice. I'll take this Wasteland. And I think it's the Tamiyo here. Is it Tamiyo? No, it's the Brazen Borrower. And then we just don't have to worry about what our opponent's doing for a while. Okay, so we can play this one out. We can reanimate targeting the Barrowgoyf in our graveyard. That is well worth 3 life to me. Do I want to save this to take out our opponent's white source that they draw after they've used it once? Or do I just want to restrict the amount of mana they have? I think I'm going to save it for a white source. A Brainstorm. Not a bad one. So our opponent's deck is somewhat set up to try and beat what we're doing because they've got, you know, white removal for our creatures. They can fully answer them. They've got like a suite of counter magic as well. Cards like Orcish Bowmasters is very good against what we're doing a lot of the time. Bouncing our threat's also pretty good. A Shoulder's Edict. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. Let's flash in a Borrower. I will sacrifice the Borrower. Well, I'm going to do this on our turn so that we can dodge a Daze. And just crash in for a bunch. Alright, our opponent's had enough because we're going to connect with Barrowgoyf this turn. Alright, a bit of a grind, but reanimating this creature is pretty broken. Alright, I think you should have to be a dedicated deck if you want to reanimate this instead of just throwing in 10 cards and just being like, yeah, we just can win the game sometimes. Alright, on to round 2. Well, we've got one of those busted hands that we can just keep. We can just go turn 1 Entomb, turn 2 Reanimate with Force of Will backup. And that is good enough to beat a lot of decks. If we draw another land, then we can pay around Daze on our go turn as well. Just, yeah. This card, the old Entomb. I will deploy Swamp and I will pass. If our opponent cracks this fetch land, are we casting the Entomb? I don't think so. Because I don't want to Entomb a creature that our opponent can reanimate. That's why I'm reluctant. Not that many people are playing Reanimator right now, because the builds are still kind of up in the air. But I'd rather be a little bit more cautious. So this could be, like, whenever I see Hedge Maze, I don't assume Nadu, but I think Nadu. As soon as we see the Xander's Lounge, we know we're playing against some kind of, like, hot bant deck. Probably with Beanstalks and all that sort of jazz. So if our opponent puts a Beanstalk on the stack, we put an Entomb on the stack. So if they fight, they at least don't get the free card off of the Beanstalk. I suspect we're about to see an up the Beanstalk. Depending on if our Entomb resolves, then we can fight over this because we have double Reanimate anyway. Alright, here we go. Here's the Beanstalk. Oh, it's the Life from the Loam. Oh yeah, I don't care about that at all. Oh, excellent. Alright, let's Entomb. Alright, let's get this Atraxa in, and then our opponent has to go to clean up. We don't get a chance to respond after they've gone to clean up, unless a trigger gets put on the stack, which was very unlikely to happen. Right, let's reanimate targeting Atraxa, please. Alright, we're just in. Okay. What do I like here? Another Force of Will doesn't hurt. I like Orcish Bowmasters as a creature. What land? I think we take the Wasteland here. Our opponent's deck looks relatively susceptible to Wastelands. Do I want a Tamiyo or a Bowmasters? Like, we take the Reanimate. I don't really want it, but it's free. In this case, do I want Bowmasters or do I want Tamiyo? I think it's probably the Bowmasters. Even though we could cast a Tamiyo right now. So we can go get our basic island. Just make sure we're free. Our opponent's showing us they got Life from the Loam. They might have a Life from the Loam lock using Wastelands. I will cast this Ponder. It takes us off of double force. I think that's fine. Abhorrent Oculus. So we need 6 cards in our graveyard. I don't really like the lands. But I guess we could... No, the Oculus is strong. We'll put the Oculus in hand. It's another blue card if we get desperate. Alternatively, we could discard the Oculus and just reanimate it. That's also a thing we're allowed to do. But I think we have a land on top. Are we going to just pitch one of our lands here? Are we going to pitch both lands? I don't think we're pitching both lands. Kind of want both reanimates just so we can keep throwing threats at our opponent until they lose. So maybe we're not doing Wasteland stuff today. Maybe that's not what this is. What our hand is best against. So we have 6 cards. So we can cast an Abhorrent Oculus with the land dots on top of our library. Shuffle the second land off the top of our library. And then we just have 2 game-ending threats. Backed up by Force of Will. And if they counter, like the Oculus, we reanimate it next turn anyway. Leyline Binding, you say. 6 cards in our opponent's hand. Am I pitching Force or am I pitching Brazen Borrower? We're not getting another blue card right now. I'm just going to pitch the Force. Like, this drew us like 4 cards anyway. And they're casting this into our Bowmasters, are they? Okay, I'll take that. They knew we had the Bowmasters here. I guess they're just in a situation that's dire. So we get to shoot our opponent 3 times. Grow our Bowmasters to be pretty large. If they're running Supreme Verdict, which these decks sometimes run a singleton of, there's not really a confirmed version of like our opponent's deck because control is just so bad in the meta right now. People haven't really worked on a build that works really well because things just aren't working really well for people right now. Right, so we have this, which you can find a Surveil land if we want it. We can crack for 7. A Supreme Verdict just lets us reanimate the Atraxa again anyway. And there's nothing I want to reanimate here. I doubt our opponent is dredging this Life from the Loam. Have they drawn a Terminus? Terminus is reasonable here. Feels like it's a Terminus because there's this long pause in their draw step. Oh no, they've just milled over with their Life from the Loam. They just didn't want to draw the cards they put on top. Makes sense. just another way of refreshing your Brainstorm, but does that really answer the problem that they currently find themselves in? So what we can do with the Brazen Borrower as well when we untap is if they flash in a Leyline Binding, we can bounce it with a trigger on the stack and then nothing ever gets removed, so it still gets to attack. That's a nice little trick you can do with things that are worded like Leyline Binding is, where it's for as long as you control this permanent. Okay. We have white mana here. We're going to see another white mana. We are. So this could be a Supreme Verdict, which just gets us another Atraxa next turn. Have you got it? Like, it has to be a Supreme Verdict here, surely. Oh no, just going for the Uro. Okay. So, I don't think they know we have a Brazen Borrower. So we can bounce this and crack for lethal. We're obviously going to be growing our little Orc army here. I've got a grip full of spells though. Like if we attack with everything, they're dead anyway, because they block here, they take exactly 8. Okay, that felt pretty good. I don't think we want counter magic here. What do I actually want though? Explosives can take out their Beanstalk in a way that's not too bad for us. I think the main thing we want here is threats though. They are the control deck, we just need to keep applying pressure with our threats. Do I like Daze here? Certainly not on the draw. So what would I like instead? They haven't shown us much. They have an Uro. Maybe they have some Planeswalkers. I wouldn't mind a Shoulder's Edict to cover that. Is this enough, or do we just want a couple of forces that we can reach for as well for our go turns? I think that looks fine. If we can deploy the Kaito at some point as well, that would give them absolute problems. Because this card is very difficult for a lot of decks to answer. If you don't have a board presence and Kaito comes down, then you're basically done unless you've got like a million Red Blasts. Well, you technically only need one, but you need to get through all the other card advantages this brings with it. Thoughtseize into threat is fine. It's not stellar by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not sure how useful the Fatal Push is going to be. They probably have Bowmasters. They have the Uro. I think we keep this, but I'm not excited about it. The fact that we have a Surveil land and then a fetch land to go get another Surveil land means we at least have a little bit of something going on here. A Force of Will. Not really one of the ones we wanted. Okay, I will Thoughtseize our opponent to see if we can make the way clear for our Dauthi Voidwalker. They're probably going to Brainstorm response and hide the best cards. A classic legacy play pattern right there. Prismatic ending, Brainstorm, Brainstorm. Okay, I'm just going to take the ending. The plan is to starve our opponent of removal. I wonder if they have access to Graveyard Hate, and that's why they were sandbagging. Something like an Endurance would be the sort of thing. An Animate Dead. Well, we can worry about that later. Do I think our opponent has Wastelands? Yes, I do. I think we get a Swamp off of this one. And we cast this Dauthi Voidwalker. Our opponent has one mystery card in hand. It could be something like a Plow. A Force of Will pitching a Brainstorm. Okay, that's kind of a big hit for us. We can get it back using an Animate Dead. The reason our opponent did that is because they want the Uro to go through and be in the graveyard as a thing they get to do later. I can understand that. They're not putting in a land. Interesting. Another Thoughtseize. Well, first things first, we do Undercity Sewers. If we mill over like a giant monster, then we're laughing. A Reanimate. I don't hate that. Okay. I will Thoughtseize again here. So I think the way this game is going to go is we're going to trade a bunch of resources down. They're going to Uro. Then my plan is to Dauthi Voidwalker, Fatal Push the Uro, get rid of it forever. Surgical Extraction. Interesting. Not a big lover of this Surgical Extraction. I'm going to take the Extraction, I think. Like, we have a Reanimate on top of our library and an Animate Dead in our hand. We really want to be able to convert those into something that does something. So if they find a land, 1, 2, 3, 4. If they find a fetch land, they can send the Uro. Okay, it's a Carpet. So if they add... No, they need to add... Yeah, they tap the... No, they had to tap the Green Lantis. Yeah, they can't make the Uro this turn, right? Because they make blue, they need to find more green. Right, so casting a Brainstorm, and then they're going to work out what they want in their second main phase. So they've got enough stuff to bring back the Uro. So our line of Reanimate, Dauthi Voidwalker, Fatal Push their Uro is available to us. And just get that gone forever. And when I've been playing some of these control decks lately, what I've noticed is you really do need like your repeatable card advantage engine, so like the Uro. So now I can go to the second main phase. They can add green. This can get them blue mana. They can put the Uro in. We have this useless Force of Will in our hand right now, but maybe it will come clutch soon. We'll find out. So we're going to see Big Daddy Uro. And no, we're not seeing the Uro. Do they not have another blue to fetch? Okay, let's just get back our Dauthi, I think. Maybe this was a line they were playing around. I'll play my Flooded Strand so we have the Fatal Push ready to go. So our opponent puts the Uro on the stack looking for a removal spell. Aha. So the other option we had was to crack this for a Surveil land and see if we can find an answer, find something that we want to bring back with the Animate Dead. I think our opponent is in a reasonable spot right now. It's a case of what the Uro finds and how long it takes them before they can play a second Uro. I assume they probably have a Mystic Sanctuary that they can fetch as well, so we need to keep an eye on what they leave. And it tells us how they're going to be playing this game a little bit. All right, they're leaving up the white removal spells. So this comes in, we put the trigger on the stack, and then we have a little look at the top of our library. And Entomb. I would very much like to have that on top of my library, please. I'm going to Fatal Push this before they get the draw. Is your one card good enough to beat Entomb Animate Dead? Probably not. Like Spell Pierce doesn't even work, I don't think. Well, I guess Spell Pierce can work, I suppose. But okay, Entomb. Let's get the Atraxa. It's always the Atraxa, isn't it? Our opponent's got one card in hand, and it's a random card. Alright. Have they got a Consign to Memory for this trigger? They do not. So we get a bunch of stuff here. So we can have a Thoughtseize here and take our opponent's last card. That's pretty nice. We have a Dauthi Voidwalker as our creature. I'll take that one. Brainstorm is probably instant here. And then I'll take a fetch land. And like I said, the Thoughtseize. And I think I actually want to just play the Dauthi Voidwalker here, because we've got a Force of Will blue card up. Once we've got the Dauthi Voidwalker and we don't have to worry about the Uro coming back, as long as we have the Dauthi Voidwalker, so I'll never have enough cards to escape it. Alright. Let's see what you're doing, opponent. Supreme Verdict is the sort of card they need to have here, but I suspect they're on a Terminus line. Right, 2 cards in hand. We can Thoughtseize them in a bit. 4 blue mana. And a green. A Lorien revealed. Would I like my opponent to draw 3 cards here? Not especially. Alright. This also goes under our Dauthi Voidwalker, so we get to draw 3 cards next turn. Well, if we do that, we do enable some Uro shenanigans. Alright. I would like to see what our opponent's last card in hand is. Could be something like a Force of Will. A Leyline Binding. Sure. I assume they're going to take out the Atraxa here. Okay. So if we blow this up, we get our Atraxa back. So this Thoughtseize does nothing. That's fine. I think we're just attacking here. We could draw 3 cards, but this just keeps our opponent's Uro down. I think that's okay for now. If we get another threat, then I can think about this. But the way we lose this game is our opponent puts Uro into play. That's the only thing that really stabilizes here. They can like kill our guys, I guess. That stabilizes them for a bit. But then we're just going to be who's drawing better off the top. But as soon as they get the Uro, they're drawing 2 cards, gaining 3 life. And it all goes a bit awry for us. A Murktide Regent. Okay. That does change things. It's only a 4/4 though. Does this mean we are drawing 3 cards? Potentially. I think so. Let's draw 3 cards. Entomb Reanimate. How much life do we have? Enough is the answer to that one. So go Archon of Cruelty. Reanimate Archon of Cruelty. Why is Entomb still legal? It's one of those questions, isn't it? So they have 1 red source here, but they obviously have the carpet, so I don't think it matters doing that. We can Brainstorm here before our opponent has anything that we need to worry about. Okay, we can put back this Wasteland, this Underground Sea. We can deploy this. We can borrower this. We don't need to do it right now though, do we? Let's cast a Ponder and shuffle those things rather than using a life total. Okay, this is fine. I will... Do I deploy this? I don't think I do. I think we hold up and just do the bounce this if our opponent taps low enough. Like, we still get the trigger from it, even if they just replay the binding again. It's pretty gross. A land. It's not really what our opponent wanted. I don't really want the card on top of my library here, do I? Let's go and get our basic island. Should have done this in our upkeep, really, just so we had the mana to play the borrower. It doesn't matter, our opponent has no hand, I guess. But it's just good practice to get into doing the right timings for stuff. Okay, Archon of Cruelty, in you go. Let's get Tamiyo in. Let's cast a Ponder. Don't even need to Brazen Borrower this Leyline Binding. I would like this Brazen Borrower though. So we go Edict on top, then the land, then the Borrower. Flip the Tamiyo, so we've just got another problem for our opponent to worry about. Plus the Tamiyo. We have lethal next turn just from the Archon of Cruelty, so our opponent's got one draw step. If they counter it, we can fire in a Bowmasters. Mystic Sanctuary. Putting the Swords to Plowshares on top of your library. I don't think that's going to work the way you want it to, opponent. I've got a sneaking suspicion that my hand full of cards is going to be enough here. And this is just lights out because we just crack for 6, the trigger for 3. And we are undefeated so far with Blue-Black Reanimator after it's copped like 3 bans in the last year. If you're going to leave Entomb legal, people are going to be playing this deck. Let's go to round 3. Well, well, well. We have another one of those silly hands where we just get to make a turn 2 Atraxa and just ruin the entire game for our opponent. Sure. Well, why wouldn't I? We've even got 2 lines of defense here. Scalding Tarn, you say. There is our Polluted Delta. If our opponent cracks their land, we'll crack ours and get our swamp. Okay, they didn't crack the land. Interesting. What does that tell us? Maybe they don't have a Surveil land, or they're worried about us having a Stifle. That is an Underground Sea. That is a Ponder. That is okay. So we get an Underground Sea in the end step. We put a Ponder on an Entomb on the stack, backing up with Daze and Force of Will. We untap, we have Atraxa. Probably win the game from that point against the blue-black deck. It's likely. It's a pretty unreasonable thing to be doing. Alright, an Undercity Sewers. What are you going to surveil away over there? Let's go and get our Underground Sea. Here is my Entomb. How do you feel about this one, opponent? There's quite the pause over there. A Daze. I'm going to Daze back. So we only need 1 mana to cast our thing. We've got Force or another Daze. I'm certainly fighting over this one, I'll tell you that much. Force of Will. Guess who also has a Force of Will? So our opponent's going to have no resources and we're going to have an Atraxa. I guess that's Magic the Gathering. Alright, we have an Atraxa trigger. How bad is this going to be for our opponent? They've just expended a lot of resources and failed to keep us from doing what we're doing. So, Orcish Bowmasters, big fan of you. Let's have some of that in our lives. Do I want that or do I want the Tamiyo, actually? We could take Tamiyo and Brainstorm. Although the Daze is very strong here. Let's put the Daze in our hand, I think. And then I'll take a Wasteland. Do I want the Tamiyo or do I want the Bowmasters? I think I'll have the Tamiyo. Okay, like our opponent just dazed their own land back, so the Daze is a lot more likely to work. It's going to stop something like a Shoulder's Edict here. This is going to be a difficult card for them to answer without something like a Kaito, and they just pitched one of the Kaitos. Underground Sea, that's the one we knew about, they bounced. Alright, we can play this Wasteland out. We can play out this Tamiyo. Good attacks. I'm going to take out their Underground Sea. The reason being, if I want them to daze something, I want them to send themselves back on tempo with the Undercity Sewers. Our opponent is doing Entomb stuff as well, I see. Yeah, I guess. Nice nice banning of the... to try and hurt the blue-black Reanimator deck we just saw, I guess. I'm sure somebody smart and handsome might have said something along the lines of, as long as Entomb is legal, blue-black Reanimator is going to be one of the best things to do in Legacy. I don't know who might have said that. Alright, a Wasteland. This is going to be shutting off our Daze. Okay, so they're just going to pay for the Daze. Would I... does it matter here? I don't think it matters if we try and Daze here. Alright, is their Atraxa better than mine? So yeah, land, instant, sorcery creature. So they probably take Tamiyo, Fatal Push. They might take the Brainstorm actually, rather than Fatal Push. The Reanimate they have is pretty scary though, because if we attack, we just trade and they can... I guess they can't... I guess they can Reanimate because they gain 7 life. Interesting. What is the solution here? So to Reanimate, Polluted Delta, Fatal Push, Tamiyo. I think we have to cast a Brainstorm here. We should attack with the Tamiyo and get our clue taken first. That was just loose of me. Put 2 cards on top of your library. How useful do I think Daze is going to be here, looking at what they have? Potentially. I don't think we want this Tamiyo. That can go. Maybe just one of the lands. Because we're going to draw it anyway next turn. Yeah, I don't like doing this that much. Because our opponent does get to Reanimate here. So we have a Borrower for their Atraxa next turn. There's no point attacking here because that just leaves them with a Atraxa and us with none because they Reanimate one after it dies. That is not how I want to be. So they probably attack our Tamiyo now. Yeah, flipping Tamiyo didn't seem like a great thing, but I did need to Brainstorm and try and dig for something like a Brazen Borrower. So I don't hate that side of it. We should have got ourselves another clue. I really, really don't want to have to Daze anything this turn because that sets back our Borrower. A Tamiyo. That's fine. We're going to 3. And a Ponder. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So we can try and Borrower away this Atraxa and crack for 7. They're going to kill our Tamiyo this turn. Although... no, we really don't want to block here. Because that Reanimate is still floating around. It's just like this big sword of Damocles over our head. Wow, they're not attacking. Wow, that doesn't seem right to me. Alright, we're going to get back this Force of Will. I think that's what this game is about right now. Go and get our Swamp. I assume we have a Swamp still. Yes, we haven't gone through it. And then we will Petty Theft this. I think our opponent made a mistake this turn. They should have attacked into the Tamiyo and just threatened us with this Reanimate. A Daze. Okay, I will Daze back. Will our superior Daze artwork come through for us? Get out of here, Atraxa. In comes our Atraxa. They have to chump block with the Tamiyo. And we're just sat on Force of Will with a lethal threat. I think our opponent could have won this game. So them not attacking the Tamiyo just gave us the Force of Will. We didn't actually need it in the end, but it certainly was a useful thing to have access to. I feel our opponent had different ways of approaching the last turn. They would like to Petty Theft our Atraxa. I would like to counterspell that. Do you have a Daze? Or is this lights out? Alright, we got there. What a ridiculous game that was. So, Ghost Vacuum, Null, not Null Rod, Ghost Vacuum, Null Spellbomb. I would quite like those. We'll get these Dauthi Voidwalkers in as well. The Go for the Throat looks good. Non-artifact creature, yes, that looks good. Shoulders Edict look good. The Barrowgoyfs are pretty reasonable here as well. What do we not want? I think we're shaving on some amount of our graveyard. So we're at least taking out one of these Reanimates. We could just completely say no to the graveyard plan. The graveyard plan is good. 7 cards. If we took all of this out, that gets us a Fatal Push and what? Do we just take a, like, Miser's Animate Dead to bring back our opponent's stuff? Probably should be a Reanimate in that case. Although this doesn't hurt us for a bunch of things. So we could have just like misers, a couple of things here. We could have the engineered explosives. We could go for something like a Force of Negation here. Do I want the Force? It's not great, the Force. I think we're going to rely on our Graveyard Hate to do the work for us. We're just going to board in some removal and some threats and just try and play a fairer game. Okay, we have Orcish Bowmasters, which is good. We have Brainstorm, which is good. Our hand here is totally fine. Hate this. Hate this a lot. We can bounce it with our Borrower, though, when the time comes. Not a fan of this. If I had 1 mana up, then I would consider counterspelling that, because I would be able to pay for a Daze. But just firing off a Force of Will on their 1-drop when they have a Daze, like, yikes. Right, we're going to take a hit here. I assume our opponent's just going to be on the slow boat to Clue Town. Could be wrong, though. If I crack this, they might cast a Brainstorm in response. Let's get the Sewers in. That's one of our Misers Reanimates. And go into the graveyard. So our opponent's going to be playing around our graveyard stuff, even though we boarded it all out. So we've got like 1 Reanimate, 1 Animate Dead, just for like the late game when we can bring back some cool stuff. Okay. I'll deploy this. I don't know if I want to Brainstorm or get an Orcish Bowmasters going here. I feel our opponent is going to play an Orcish Bowmasters or just crack this Clue. If they crack the Clue, we can Bowmasters in. I will take this value because we have another Bowmasters to pick up their one. I will get the basic swamp so we can play on basics for the rest of this game. How do you feel about Orcish Bowmaster? They don't care about it. I don't know if that's good or bad for us. But we have some Orc Supremacy right now. A Wasteland. We've been fetching basics. Colourless mana. They would like to play their own Orcish Bowmaster. That's not why we're fighting here. Like I said, we have another Orcish Bowmaster. That's the only reason we played this one out. Because we knew that we had another one in the chamber. I get your Clue. Okay, I'm going to Thoughtseize my opponent. I think that's a good... Actually, I want to play my land first. Then I'd like to Thoughteize my opponent. Animate Dead, Brazen Borrower, Fatal Push, Fatal Push. 2 pushes are a little bit awkward for us. We can take one and counterspell the other one. They can Animate Dead back a Bowmaster at some point. I don't really care about that. Alright, we'll take one of these pushes. Then we'll attack with our 2-2. So I want to force through an extra point of damage here and get rid of their Bowmaster. We know this will work right now. They can Fatal Push. I think I'm willing to fight over the Fatal Push. Is that true? They have an Animate Dead. They can just go and get their Bowmasters back. I think I'll fight over the Animate Dead. This doesn't feel great to me, but it's the line that we've chosen for ourselves. So now they're going to Fatal Push. Yeah, I think our opponent wins this game on the current trajectory. Why? Interesting they're not attacking with the Orc army here. I think that's a slam dunk right there. Unless I guess they can just chump with it, but that doesn't feel amazing. Alright, the Fatal Push. I'm okay with having access to that one. I will attack with my bigger creature. Brazen Borrower only bounces opponent's permanents. We can't save our Bowmasters from this Fatal Push. Alright, here comes the Fatal Push. Alright, they're going to block here. So they are doing the chump block. And preserve their life total. Targeting the Orc army. Really? You have a Brazen Borrower in hand. I'll take out a Tamiyo. Whilst I know there's nothing going on here. Why do they do it like that? That's very weird. This suggests to me that my opponent has a Kaito that they're trying to chuck in. Or is this just big Barrowgoyf time? Our opponent is ahead. They got a draw engine set up. Abhorrent Oculus. This can come down, and then we will answer it. Is the Orc army going to attack for 1? No. Very cowardly Orc army. Okay, so we're going to Brazen Borrower with this now, so they don't get any extra stuff from it. Yeah, so we are playing a full-on mirror match here. This is a Surveil land that's better in play than in our hand for a Brainstorm. So dueling Borrowers until their Oculus gets to ride again. Now we could obviously draw our own Oculus. Kind of forgotten about that card because we haven't really seen it this league. I think we had it in game 1 when we were already like a million miles ahead. But that was at the beginning of the league and it's been a while. There's been a lot going on here. Alright, so we get a ping from our Bowmasters onto their Orc army here. Alright, let's take out the Orc army. If they have a Bowmasters here, it means they have to kill our Bowmasters rather than our Borrower, which is probably what they want to do anyway. But it's kind of free for us to work this way. Alright, Brazen Borrower, it's your time to shine as a beatstick. We got our second and final Undercity Sewers here. Thoughtseize when our opponent has 3 cards in hand. That's hard to pass up. Let's fire this in so we don't know, so we know if there's any surprises coming before we attack. Because I would like to attack with a Bowmaster to get more damage going on our opponent's life total. Reduce things like Reanimate if they have them. Abhorrent Oculus, Brazen Borrower, Thoughtseize. I guess we take the Oculus here. Because at some point that will just beat us. They're going to flash in the Borrower and just trade with our Borrower. Or they're going to go for a race here. They're just going to bounce our little guy. Sure. Right, so we crash for 4. These clue tokens at present aren't really helping them out. If we draw a reanimation spell, we can reanimate their Abhorrent Oculus. I think we only have 1 Animate Dead left. Alright, we're seeing a Surveil land. Hopefully they put something in the bin that they don't want. I don't want to see them getting something. Okay. They don't want to Brainstorm because we have a Borrower, a Bowmaster. A Tamiyo. So we have perfect information of our opponent's hand. We still get to crash in for 3. They might just trade Borrowers here. Would like to be able to reanimate their Oculus, maybe. A Thoughtseize. I don't really want to Thoughtseize my opponent's Thoughtseize. I'll leave this so our opponent can take it. I think I'm okay trading here. The Borrower can only block creatures with flying, so it can trade the Borrower, but the Bowmasters is fine here. And they're just going for the trade here. That seems reasonable. And then they block here. Alright. So we forced our opponent's hand to do something there. Hopefully they cast the Thoughtseize targeting us, so we get a little bit of free shock value. Take that to the face, 2 of your finest, their opponent. So they can just sit here and hold. I don't think accruing clues is the best idea. If they've got a Kaito on top of the library, then we get absolutely ruined here. No Kaito. They're cracking a clue. I will ping our opponent for 1. Go on. Crack a clue and then Thoughtseize me. They're cracking a clue. Yep. So our creatures are going to be smaller. So it's going to be harder to get the final bits of damage in. Go for the throat. A little bit late on that one, opponent. Or deck even. Do I want to attack my opponent for 1 here? Or I think I'm just going to attack... I think I'm going to attack them for 1 rather than the Tamiyo. Like they can get back, what, Ponder or Brainstorm. Those aren't things they want to get back here. So crack a clue. Then we get something. So we can put some damage on this next turn if we want to. We've got the ability to kill like a Barrowgoyf or whatever. A Thoughtseize. This will get one of our cards, unfortunately. So I'm going to take the go for the throat. Unless they want to protect their hand. Okay, they're going to crack a clue here. An Orcish Bowmaster. Yeah, that's a good one. I think our opponent has this one. 3 damage is all that stands in the way of us winning. So attacking Tamiyo is very, very difficult here. We've got a Shoulder's Edict which can answer this. The Wasteland isn't really the one, is it? I think I will Thoughtseize just to see what our opponent is working with over there. I'm guessing it's going to be a land or something irrelevant. So we could attack our opponent for 1. They can double block and we take the Bowmasters, or we can just sit back and hold. Am I playing out this Wasteland? I don't think so. We might be in a situation where we have to Brainstorm some cards back just to get the final damage over. But our opponent can now crack their clues freely and it's starting to slip away. Maybe we can just get Bowmasters in play, our opponent goes to Tamiyo ult, and then they die to it. That would be something. We have Bowmasters in our yard, so we can reanimate if we draw our reanimation. I think I'm going to pivot back to full Reanimator for game 3 when we're on the play. We can just send it before our opponent can interact. Alright, next turn our opponent gets to draw half of their deck. A Brainstorm. Okay. A Dauthi Voidwalker. They can probably not attack here, but that's fine. They're just sitting back making sure that Tamiyo can go the distance. Ugh, hate this, but I think we have to do it. Not a lover of this one, I'll tell you that much. Like, we're very dead next turn. Alright, we only drew lands. Okay. So, do I want to full send it or not? Our opponent boarded almost identically to how we boarded there, which is interesting. I think we either want to have access as engineered explosives or we want to full send. How useful is being on the play if we're trying to full send it? Certainly doesn't hurt. We can swap one of these out for one of these. I don't really like the Force of Wills in the matchup at all. It doesn't feel like that we can get away without them if our opponent is sending it. Do we want, like, there's no point boarding in. I guess we could like board out some of these and just board in more Reanimates and just keep buying back big scary monsters. That's an interesting line. Like, we're not buying back the scariest things in the world, but, you know, getting back like a Bowmasters or a Dauthi Voidwalker or just something is actually really worth it here, and it's quite efficient doing it for 1 mana. Okay, we can play a Tamiyo and then hope that we can ride that to victory. I don't really want to get Wastelanded. Our opponent might have boarded out some number of Wastelands. They're not great in the matchup. We do need to get an Underground Sea here. I think it is correct to play the Tamiyo. If we get Wastelanded and we lose the game because of it, and we could have pondered, sure. But our opponent shouldn't be Wastelanding when we're like ahead on board with a Tamiyo, really. Scalding Tarn. Excellent. I'm glad our opponent agreed. I wonder if they boarded out their Wastelands. A Ponder, sure. I think we're just going to go untap, attack with Tamiyo, Brainstorm our way. Like, our opponent, if they're on the same list as us, they have one answer in their entire deck to Tamiyo. Oh no, sorry, 2 answers because they've got the Shoulder's Edict as well. But that's going to be a real doozy for them. So I think the play here is untap, Brainstorm, play Nile Spellbomb. Well, we want to attack first and make sure we get a clue for later. So we've drawn our answer to Tamiyo. Brainstorm? Okay. We didn't draw the land I wanted, though. So I guess we can put back... What are we going to mill over here? I think it's the explosives we mill over, actually. So we flip this. We go up with it. Mill over our engineered explosives. And we hope that our opponent can't send with like stuff before we get to the Nile Spellbomb. But next turn looks real good for us. We've got loads of really cheap interaction. We can Thoughtseize first and then decide what is best for us to hold up. Okay, so we're unlikely. I guess they could still mill over a big monster here, actually. They did mill over a big monster. We really need our Daze to work here. Oh, it worked. Excellent. That is a real relief. Play a land out. Fire in a Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize, Nile Spellbomb, Barrowgoyf, Brainstorm. Do we take... I think we take the Dauthi, because if they take a turn off to Thoughtseize, then that's another turn before the Tamiyo can pop. That seems okay to me. And then I will deploy the Spellbomb just so we're covered on that angle. I don't think I'm going to get back a Daze. I'm just going to plus. Our opponent isn't threatening this, and if we can just draw our library, then we get to win the game. That's what that usually does. So we're going to see the Swamp. This is a nice Swamp as well. When I'm not using Onslaught Swamps, this is one of the ones I like to use. But yeah, so if they want to go for Barrowgoyf and just tap out, yeah, so they don't. So they're not going to threaten us here. They can take our Fatal Push, we can buy it back. But now they're kind of under the gun here because this pluses, they don't have a threat. They play a threat next turn, this minuses, and then they lose. So that's a tough place for our opponent to be right there. They drew a Ponder for turn. So we have perfect information bar whatever they get off this Ponder. We're hoping for a shuffle. The one card we don't want our opponent to have access to is Orcish Bowmasters. They shuffled. A Brainstorm. Interesting order to do that because you can use the Ponder to shuffle. I suspect they're getting rid of this Nihil Spellbomb. I think I will cast a Ponder first. What do we have here? Ponder, Reanimate. Oh, we can just reanimate their Archon of Cruelty, can't we? That's disgusting. I'll do that. And we still have the Tamiyo clock going as well. All right, we win the game. We've managed to win the mirror, so we're currently 3-0. That was an interesting mirror. Our opponent going into the full Send It mode with the Archons of Cruelty, I don't like. I thought about it, but I think you just go lower to the ground and just have like the Blue-Black Tempo matchup, because Blue-Black Tempo, generally speaking, is incredibly favoured against the Reanimator deck. In fact, that was the only reason it was the second best deck before the bannings. All right, 2 more rounds to go. Let's keep cracking. We are on the play. I think this is a no from me. I'm going to mulligan this one. All right, I can live with this one. We can keep this. We'll bottom the Archon here. We can just start with a friendly little Tamiyo. This card is pretty bonkers, to be honest. Like, it's certainly not the most egregious thing in the format, but if we start clipping some more of the stuff that annoys people in the format, this could end up being right up there. Delver of Secrets. I would like to Fatal Push this Delver. And we get a Thoughtseize for our trouble as well. This is tricky to decide what we're... I think we Fatal Push first around a Daze, and then we can Thoughtseize and work out what we're doing. So we're getting a non-basic here. See what they're working with. I'm happy to take 2 damage to take out something really scary over there. They could Daze this, but it sets them back. Force of Will, Brainstorm. Okay, we'll take your Brainstorm. Nice. So we know what the dealio is here. And we can just draw cards and carry on. We don't care about this Wasteland because we have another land, so we can start cracking clues. They're just going to Wasteland us because they don't have anything else going on, or they're going to go for the Flooded Strand loot. Okay, so they could have Flooded Strand for a... Oh, that was a very good rip. I was going to say they could Flooded Strand and try and go for the Surveil land that they have. They probably have a Thundering Falls. With the Lightning Bolt, it probably tells us that they're running blue-red. I could Wasteland them here. I don't think there's any point. I could get back a Tamiyo. That doesn't feel the most high-power thing we can do. I think we're just going to draw a card before our opponent plays anything else, like a Bowmasters or whatever. I don't believe that they're doing that because they've shown us a Lightning Bolt rather than black removal. But they could still have some mix of like Fatal Pushes and Bolts. Flooded Strand. Also the fact that the lands we're seeing, none of them are black. Well, sorry, we're seeing the Flooded Strand rather than black ones. Like they do have a Polluted Delta still. Do they really just draw a Murktide off the top? Yikes. That is a little bit on the rude side. And Entomb. They have a Force of Will. Okay, we will crack this now for a Surveil land in case we put a big monster in. A Daze. That Daze is not likely to matter here, is it? Although if they keep up 1 mana, we can Wasteland them and then Entomb Reanimate around a Daze. I just don't think that works. Yeah, that rip was really good. So they had 2 perfect rips off the top in terms of the Lightning Bolt and the Murktide. So it's our turn, I guess, to try and rip something good. I can't really just Entomb here. Need to make sure that goes through. Not easy to do in the face of these Force of Wills. We could Thoughtseize to punch a hole. Maybe they get a bit angsty and try and hit this Ponder. Kaito, Bane of Nightmares. I've got a plan. So we need to keep the land and the Kaito. So we can play around our opponent's Wasteland. No, they've used their Wasteland, haven't they? Okay, so we're going to force our opponent's hand here. With the intention of playing the Kaito and sleeping the Murktide. Force of Will, pitching Force of Will. That was the exchange we were aiming for. And next turn we have Kaito around Daze. We can lock this down and then start taking over the game in theory. And then at some point this Animate Dead will become useful. If they got blue card Force of Will, then sure, you just got an opponent. A Ponder, that's fine. A Wasteland. So we've played around this Wasteland by keeping land on top. If the last card in their hand is Daze, then they get us here. But if it isn't, then I think we're in a really solid position here. Might as well get the swamp at this point. Can I Kaito, please? We are dead if they have the Daze, because they can just crack us for 5. Please, can I Kaito? We can Kaito. I would like to tap target creature and put 2 stun counters on it, please. They can Lightning Bolt our Kaito. So they have a tool that works here. They can't do it on our turn, obviously. This is going to be the Thundering Falls. A Steam Vents. Okay. We're very much blue-red if they're playing Steam Vents. Surely you want Thundering Falls in that slot. Okay. I would like to attack and draw some extra cards, please. So we Surveil 2, and then we draw a card. Put this into the graveyard. Put this on top of my library. Cast the Ponder. A Brazen Borrower, a Force of Will, and a Thoughtseize. Okay, I think we don't want the Thoughtseize, so we can Surveil that away next turn. We put the Borrower on top for now, and then have this Force of Will in our hand, just to make sure that the worst case scenarios are avoidable. I believe that our Kaito can just go all the way here. A Lightning Bolt. This is why we put the Force of Will in our hand. Delver of Secrets. Okay. It's pretty good. So we attack with this and we see if they block. Would you like to stop me getting a card or not? This is a really interesting block for our opponent. Like, obviously throwing away Delver isn't great. Okay. I would like to Petty Theft this first so I know if it resolves or not. Okay, now I would like to Surveil and draw a card. I think we put these into the graveyard. A land, not too bothered about that, but we can play out the Borrower here. That does put us into range of Lightning Bolts, is the only downside for doing that. We could Animate Dead on a Tamiyo, then we can chump block this if it flips. Is that better than trading and going to a lower life total? Alright, I think we're going to put ourselves dead to Lightning Bolt. We can also see where this attacks as well. A Daze. Alright, well, before our opponent draws that card, I'm going to go and fetch. I very much like to not play into this Daze at turn 8 of the game. Right, we're dead to Lightning Bolt anyway. Have they got Brainstorm? They had a Daze in hand. Alright. Maybe they attack the Kaito. They shouldn't attack the Kaito here. Let's see if they make a mistake. This is what we need our opponent to do here. No, we're dead there. Okay. It was a close one along the way, but we just couldn't quite get over the finish line. Ended Explosives. Get that in there. That feels good. Fatal Push. Go for the Throat. Shoulder's Edict. All these things are good. Force of Will bad. Barrowgoyf is real hard for them to beat, so let's get that in there. I don't like the Wastelands, so we'll take out some Wastelands. Is that okay? Do I want anything else? Dauthi is useful against our opponent. How many Dazes do we realistically want, I guess, is another question. Tamiyo is fine. Thoughtseize is okay. We could turn the Thoughtseizes just into some Dauthis here. But then we're left with 2 slots. Do we want 2 Thoughtseizes in? Do we want any counter magic of any description in? Being on the play and having another Daze. I really don't like drawing Thoughtseizes later on, but the Dazes aren't amazing either. I'm going to have a Powder Keg. Just make sure their creatures aren't killing us. Okay, I'll keep this, I guess. So we have 2 choices. We can either play... Like, we're going to have 1 non-basic, so we should probably get 2 non-basics here. So we should probably just go Surveil land into Dauthi Voidwalker. And maybe we Surveil our giant monster and then our opponent dies. That's always something I'm fond of doing. Okay, let's go and get this Undercity Sewers. An island. Sure, I don't mind having an island. That means this can get us a swamp. Am I playing this Dauthi Voidwalker right now? I think I am. It just stops our opponent's graveyard shenanigans. So Murktide Region, Dragon's Rage Channeler. Now they might just lightning bolt this straight away. That's fine, we can reanimate it if we want to. A Daze. I will not pay. So our opponent is setting themselves back. They're going to use that blue mana for anything, or is it just there so they can pay around our Daze? They are brainstorming. Okay, not the most optimal brainstorm because they're going to have to probably draw at least one of the cards they put back. So next time we can Dauthi. Like the first game against our opponent here was very, very close. Graph Digger's Cage. Shot. We have a powder keg that answers that. So the first game was very, very close, and they had to like have rip into rip early doors just to stop us from winning. So I feel this matchup is reasonable for us. A Surgical Extraction. All right, our opponent's putting a lot into this. I don't know why they're surgically extracting that at this time either. That's so weird to me. You do this after we've drawn for turn, so you can take out the one that we might have drawn, so we're more likely to have drawn one then. Yeah, that just seems like a really weird line to me, that one. I understand having the surgical extraction in the matchup, but that's just not how I would use it. It does suggest our opponent has access to more of them. Alright, can we get a powder keg, please? Okay. So we may put a charge counter on this in our upkeep, and then we can sack it and destroy each thing. So we can just leave this at 1. And then our opponent can't play channelers and stuff like that. Well, they can, but they will get gobbled up by the powder keg. Let's see if we can get ourselves some Undercity Sewers action. We do not want that. No big monster in our graveyard, unfortunately. Yes, I would like a fuse counter on this. So we can blow up the Graph Digger's Cage whenever we want. I would like to cast a Brainstorm. This is worth Pyroblasting if our opponent has one. An Entomb is pretty solid here. 5 cards in our opponent's hand. I like all of the things we have access to here. So I think we put Reanimate and Polluted Delta on top. And then, am I just playing out a Barrowgoyf here into a pretty obvious looking Daze? Or I can just pop this right now. And let's see if we resolve this Entomb. A Brainstorm. Be my guest. A Force of Will. Sure, we got a 2-for-1 with that, and then we can follow up with Barrowgoyf, which can then mill us some cards that we can reanimate anyway. Love it. We've got Fatal Push around Daze if they've been sandbagging one of their creatures. I don't think Wastelanding us here is a good use of their time. This, on the other hand, the old Big Murktide, that is a pretty good use of their time. Not firing off the Wasteland is interesting. I guess they're trying to play around us having a Daze. I'll play this one out. I will play a Barrowgoyf. Our opponent has 2 hits if we crack this fetch to kill us. But obviously the Barrowgoyf changes things. I'm trying to remember what we put on top of our library. It was another Reanimate, wasn't it? I don't think we want the other Reanimate. So this probably becomes a Surveil land. It's been some good game. Like the first 2 games here have been pretty good so far against this Delver opponent. They're starting to run low on resources. We've got things like Go for the Throat and Shoulder's Edict we're drawing to. They shuffled off the Ponder. That's good news for us. I think they've correctly surmised that this Wasteland isn't necessarily a thing they want to be using to attack our mana. Alright, let's go and get ourselves... Oh no, we've already used our Surveil lands. We're just shuffling the Reanimate off the top of our library though. Which we definitely don't want. And we immediately drew it again. Okay. Can we mill over an Archon of Cruelty, please? That'd be lovely. We did not mill over anything that we get back. Or anything that we can reanimate. Okay, so we take 8. We go to a 4. Then we crack back for another 4. And then we are dead if we don't find something in our next turn cycle. Reanimating stuff is getting a little bit awkward. We did shuffle to not draw this and immediately we drew it, which is a bit unfortunate. We need some slightly better rips here. A Counterbalance. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That might shut down what we're doing. An Underground Sea. That's not the one. Okay, so we're kind of all in on this Barrowgoyf to flip over something that helps us out. Brazen Borrower? Not a Brazen Borrower. A Tamiyo works here though, right? We can block with a Tamiyo for a turn. Alright, that's what we're doing. Don't counterbalance me, bro. It's quite likely to be a 1-drop. A Misty Rainforest. Also a blank on top of our opponent's library. That doesn't hurt either. Keeps in hand for purposes of Brainstorm. We're now attacking for 5. So it's getting a bit tight for our opponent here. A Lightning Bolt. And then they just come through for 8. Is there anything we can do about this? No. Our opponent just has this. Yeah. I think we were pretty even a lot of the time, but our opponent just had one too many draws that were good for us. Like in game 1 where they had the Lightning Bolt into Murktide Regent. Like if we'd have just waited a turn for either of those spells, then we would have been fine. And then this game, we drew like blank Reanimate while our opponent drew the Lightning Bolt they needed this turn. So yeah, I think unfortunate that our undefeated run has come to an end, but these games were close, and you can certainly see how our deck is certainly able to beat what our opponent's putting down if it breaks just marginally differently. I think the 2-0 is a very unrepresentative scoreline for how the matchup feels. We got 1 round left. See if we can put the classic 4-1 on the board. All right. Sometimes you just got to send it, and that's what we're doing today. This is basic Swamp, Entomb, Reanimate. I don't think we can just... Because we have 2 Entombs as well, I don't think we get to Entomb in our turn. I'm going to crack this now just in case there's a Stifle. That's one of the things that could possibly mess us up. Let's get the Swamp. So our opponent is expecting Fatal Pushes from us because we've done this. Obviously we have Fatal Pushes, so that's the thing we're allowed to try and do here, but I don't think we care about our opponent like making a Delver or something here. Can I Entomb? So now we know our opponent isn't Reanimator, it's safe to Entomb here. How would you like to interact with this one? A Daze? Sure. Just cast an Entomb. Alright. Our opponent had all of the answers, but now we've got 2 removal spells. You're going to flip this Delver? They are. Sometimes the Delvers will Delver you. And there's the Ponder. I would like to Fatal Push your Insectile Aberration, please. I will deploy this Wasteland. I'm not in love with it, but we do have 2 colorless pips on this old Kaito. That is a Delver of Secrets. You'll never guess what we have, opponent. Your friend and mine, Fatal Push. Tamiyo would love to cast you, but isn't what's happening. I think we wait till our opponent's upkeep so we can see if this flips, so we get a little bit more information. Downside is our opponent also gets that information, so there's a Ponder there. Alright, I will just push this now. Blue source, we can slam a Kaito or an Tamiyo. A Dragon's Rage Channeler. It's a 3-3. So we could just reanimate a Delver, because it's likely to flip given the configuration of our deck. But that feels like a waste of a card that can just end the game on the spot. An Undercity Sewers. This could mill over a giant monster for us one time. No. I'll leave this on top. It allows us to play around Daze. It also means that we're not dead to a Wasteland on our Undercity Sewers. And then we can play a Tamiyo or a Kaito, depending on what we think is the better option here. Let's crack this. Go and get an island. I think I would like to cast this Kaito. If they Force of Will this, we can then play the Tamiyo. Okay, we are in. I think we are stunning this guy for a little bit. And then I don't really want to play into a Daze. It feels like our opponent has a Daze here. A Lightning Bolt on our Kaito is certainly annoying. A Brainstorm. Yep, get that extra selection going. I wonder if we're supposed to be just like straight blue-black tempo in this matchup. I don't think so. But like Reanimate does become a little bit shaky. Also got to worry about Pyroblasts post board. Right, lots of land. That's not really what our opponent wants. An Unholy Heat, which can target Planeswalkers. Goodbye, Kaito. And a stock up. Yeah, that's pretty good. So Kaito is not a creature in the graveyard, so we can't cast Reanimate. We can't do the classic Grist trick, where you treat it like a creature in all zones. Probably for the best. I don't think this deck should be allowed to reanimate Kaito as well. A bauble. So what do we have here? We have instant Planeswalker land. We can reanimate their Dragon's Rage Channeler. And that gets us a sorcery. So we'll have a 3/3. And play 1 mana for a 3/3. That's not too shabby. Alright, Tamiyo. Out you come. Let's get back. We could get their Murktide Regent. But I think that the Dragon's Rage Channeler is better. Because the Dragon's Rage Channeler gives us a selection. And we only take 1 damage instead of 7. I don't think we are reanimating a Delver of Secrets here. We have the ability to just win the game by reanimating something big. Although that window is closing with our life total. A Brainstorm. Now if they have a Brazen Borrower and bounce their Channeler to their hand, that can really come back to bite us. Again, I don't think it's worth using these Wastelands here. We use these to play around soft permission rather than trying to deny our opponent's resources, because our opponent's deck operates perfectly fine on 2 mana. There may be situations where we can hit an open piece of mana and maybe make a late game Daze work for us. Whereas just hitting these willy-nilly right now is not going to work. These also can trigger Revolt, which might be useful if we're trying to kill something like a Brazen Borrower. We're going to trade off some Channelers here. That'll be for next turn. Alright, so now we have an 8/8 Murktide Regent. That's not the one I want to see, I'll tell you that much. Our Channeler will have to attack into this unless we can find something like a Borrower right now. Force of Will is not a Borrower. I guess we reanimate targeting a Delver of Secrets here. Get our Surveil. Obviously we're going to surveil a giant monster now, aren't we? An Orcish Bowmasters. What does that do for us? Not a lot. I'm going to put this into the graveyard. This gets us a Delver, which can flip next turn. So this has to attack now, and then we have 8, 9, 10, 11 damage coming in. So I think the way we are most likely to win this game is to attack with both of these, make a treasure, not a treasure, a clue, and then we can crack this clue and see what the future holds for us. An Entomb. So we wouldn't have got to the Entomb if we didn't cast a Reanimate to mill over the Bowmasters anyway. So we are just dead here. So they just attack with everything next turn. Alright. This Delver matchup is proving a little more tricky than I would have imagined. So, how do we want to go about this? Let's have some removal spells, please. Let's have some threats. Again, I don't think we want the forces. We're trading a bunch of resources. Maybe we're supposed to like ease back on reanimates and stuff. Alright, we'll try this. Maybe we are. We could also like Ghost Vacuum to keep their graveyard down. That doesn't feel great though. I know Spell Bomb is arguably better than that. But I think we're going to go in here because like sometimes you just need to just make your Archon of Cruelty to win the game. Alright, I'll keep this. We have a Brainstorm, we have some removal spells. Let's hope we don't get ruined. No Wasteland, that's good news for us. So we can happily Brainstorm next turn. I don't think we're brainstorming end step here. Okay, Brainstorm. Let's go. Found the land, we found the Entomb, we found some other bits and pieces too. We'll put rid of this. We'll get rid of this powder keg. And then I guess we put the explosives on top as well, with the intention of drawing the explosives. And we're just going to play our Entomb around a Daze. Like, I guess we could just shove it and just have double Daze and hope that's good enough. If our opponent's got mana up, then we're definitely not just shoving it. Right, let's try this Entomb out and see what happens here. We've got double Dazes. You see a Brainstorm here, a Spell Pierce, a Force of Will. Sure, I'll take that. That's a reasonable 2-for-1, and then we can Surveil away. I would play 1 mana, your opponent discards 2 cards, and that's what we just did. Thundering Falls. We've got access to a couple of Dazes here. If we want the powder keg, we can just draw it. There is a Wasteland. So I think we want to go and fetch our Undercity Sewers here. And try and dig our way towards some more mana, most likely. A Reanimate that can go into the graveyard. An Orcish Bowmaster. I can play explosives on 1. We might not be able to make this a 3-mana play, and if our opponent fought over this, we might be able to Daze and save our land and get another Surveil going. Another Wasteland here, obviously bad for us. Yep. So that shuts off the Daze in our hand as well. Right, just a bit of a non-game here. This one is certainly more of a stomp than the last round, I think. What are we doing on 3 mana? Stock up. Yeah, that's pretty good. Expressive Iteration is back, baby. Right, let's cast an Entomb. We have a Daze. Our opponent is tapped out. I think it's the Archon of Cruelty. And we'll pass. We have the Dazes. Next turn we can Reanimate. If our opponent Wastelands us again, then we're going to have to find out. There's another Wasteland. Of course there is another Wasteland. Sure. Oh, Murky Boy. Yeah. It's only a 6/6. Just a casual 6/6. Nothing to be afraid of. Okay, we have a Wasteland that is irrelevant. Cool. It helps us play around Daze, and maybe we get to crack the explosives if they play something like a Cage. But they've got 3-ish turns of killing us. Give or take a Lightning Bolt. Come on, Black Sauce. Not a Black Sauce. It's this Powder Cake we shuffled away. Okay. So, reanimating the Archon of Cruelty doesn't look like a viable plan anymore. Because we're not going to have enough life. But, you know, sometimes you do get triple Wastelanded at the start of the game. And you don't get to play Magic. And that is what's happened here, unfortunately. Yikes. What a fail at the end of the league there. We absolutely slaughtered people in the early rounds, and then the 2 rounds against the Delver decks just didn't break our way. The first round felt like things just slipped slightly through the cracks and we didn't quite get there. That round, obviously we had the triple Wasteland, which is just, you know, we're going to lose to that. But the other round felt pretty hard as well. So maybe Blue-Red Delver is a little bit trickier. Especially since these new builds are running stock ups. So it's basically expressive iteration again. I don't think they can run 4 of them, but Brave New World and all that. So let's talk about the deck. I think this deck is incredibly strong. I don't think it's fully formed. I think there's still a little bit more tweaking to go on. Like some of the numbers of, like, you know, the Oculus. Basically all of these numbers. So I think these 15 cards is kind of where you want to mess around with a little bit. But the rest of it felt pretty solid to me. You could run something like a Tainted Indulgence here if you wanted to. But, you know, it felt like we were in all the games apart from, you know, when we get Wastelanded to Oblivion or whatever. But, yeah, this deck is incredibly powerful. And I think there was a huge mistake in banning Troll and not Reanimate. For me, I think this deck should be... There should be 2 decks that Reanimate in Legacy. There should be the deck that is dedicated to playing these creatures. So, you know, you're playing your Careful Studies, your Faithless Lootings, your Putrid Imps, trying to get these into the graveyard, right? And reanimate them, because that is worth dedicating a deck to. We already see Show and Tell doing it. These cards are just very strong. And then the other deck should be like a blue-black Death Shadowy style thing where, you know, you cycle your Troll and then you reanimate that and it helps you get your Death Shadows out early and you're just playing fair. The problem card, in my opinion, is still Entomb because this bridges the gap and lets you play these in the deck. I think I'd really like to play like the Death Shadow with Trolls, but it's just no point when Entomb exists because it's just this is the best thing to be doing with Entomb. So I think it was a bit of a swing and a miss on banning the Troll because this deck feels, you know, just as good. I think I probably did better today than I did the last couple of times I played the previous build before it got banned. And there's also a bit in their little article that Wizards of the Coast published where they said, actually, why don't I look it up? Power of Internet. Let's find that article. Alright, so here is the bit that I've highlighted here. So they said the issue is that despite having several different decks, the format's slower macro archetypes like mid-range and control have largely been pushed out of the metagame as environmental pressures have wildly condensed the games. Now, wildly condensed the games is the key part here. Because they write that and then they ban Troll, which isn't the thing that's condensing the game. Entomb, to get your Atraxa early doors, is the thing that's condensing the game. So I think the claim of what they're trying to fix and how they try to fix it doesn't actually make sense to me. Back to the deck though. Yeah, like Entomb, on like the first couple of turns of the game is really busted. Like there's no getting around it. Entomb into Reanimate is a very powerful thing to do, and as long as that's a thing you get to do in Legacy, people are going to be doing it, and I think it's still going to be very good in these blue shells. Quite what this deck should look like, ideally, I don't know. It felt like we needed another like big flyer. So the old Reanimate decks, I've played some builds that didn't have Murktide and they felt bad to me. The builds that had 2 Murktide in felt like where I wanted to be, so I think maybe we could be doing something more akin to that and trying to fit in 2 Murktides. It's maybe instead of the Oculus. Now I understand the Oculus is something that you can also entomb for, and it's pretty reasonable to entomb and reanimate this, but maybe just having Murktide is better. It's just a more reliable threat, cheaper to actually hard cast. Although, you know, the text of this card is pretty great, to be fair. But this will lose out to an opposing Murktide. Whereas if we have a Murktide of our own, then we can at least do dueling Murktides. Suffice to say, I think this deck is very, very good. I think it is one of the better things to be doing in Legacy right now, even though I don't think it's entirely fully cooked to perfection just yet. Sideboard-wise, like, we had a bunch of tools. Like, it is just a bunch of, like, random tools that seem okay. And like I said, this deck has got 2 5-0 leagues so far. And I think it's definitely going to start putting up some numbers as people kind of fine-tune it. What we saw last time we saw bans when Psychic Frog went away is we saw Oops All Spells to begin with was like smashing events, which is what we saw immediately after these bans. And then we also saw Blue-Red Delver doing well, which again is something that we're seeing in the results so far. And then as things went on, just the share of the meta that was Blue-Black Reanimator just slowly crept up over time because it just sort of pushed out so many other decks. And I feel we're going to end up in a similar situation, and maybe we'll end up with Entomb going and Troll coming back, which was what I'd like to see. So if you were worried about Blue-Black Reanimator not being a deck, well, here it is. And I think the deck is perfectly fine, and you can definitely innovate upon this and make it better. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.